You exist here.
I exist here.
Hey, it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Now, a lot of Star Trek shows take some time to find their footing. The first season can be a little rough, not to mention a lot of changes happen after the premiere episode. Deep Space Nine, however, hit the ground running with its premiere episode, Emissary, defining a lot of the show's concepts that become important over the course of 7 years. But as grand as Emissary is, it's the start of the personal journey of the station's commander, Benjamin Sisko, and his struggles to cope with the grief of losing his wife and raising his young son alone. Not to mention, being well on his way to becoming one of the franchise's most beloved captains. This episode has everything that's great about DS9. World building, action, character development, and it's also the start of a very different kind of Star Trek. Settle in, crew. You exist here now for the start of DS9, Emissary.
Do you realize how incredible this is?
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. Emissary begins during the events of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Best of Both Worlds. And the crawl gives you all the context you need, so you don't necessarily need to watch The Best of Both Worlds before starting DS9. Though you probably should, it is a big part of Star Trek.
Mr. Worf. Fire.
Picard is kidnapped by the Borg, assimilated, and forced to lead the assault against the Federation at Wolf 359, which doesn't end well. Commander Benjamin Sisko, first officer of the USS Saratoga, comes face to face with a rather pale-looking, bald, tea-guzzling captain, just before he carves the ship up like, well, some replicated bird meat. Yeah, there's no way to buff out those scratches. With no option other than to abandon ship, Sisko searches for his wife Jennifer and son Jake amid the chaos and manages to find both in their quarters. Young Jake is going to be okay and is handed off to a fellow officer to get to the escape pods. Desperate for Jennifer to live, Sisko attempts to lift a fallen beam off of her, but to no avail. Jennifer is already gone, the warp core is about to breach, and Sisko literally has to be dragged away to the escape pods.
Damn it! We just can't leave her here! Oh! Oh!
And I have to say it, Avery Brooks is already making a strong first impression just in the opening scene. He's a badass, taking command, but he's also very thoroughly human. The anguish in his voice, the despair, it's all brilliant and absolutely heart-wrenching. Heck, look at Sisko's face just as the Saratoga blows up. Avery Brooks manages to convey grief, despair, and anger all in a look. Also, why don't we ever see this guy again? This guy was somehow strong enough to pull a fighting Sisko away to the escape pods, not to mention saving his life. You'd think they'd keep in touch or something. 3 years later. Sisko has been working at the Utopia Planitia shipyard since Wolf 359. He just got a new assignment to command a newly acquired station, Deep Space Nine. However, he's considering leaving Starfleet since he's raising his son alone while still grieving the loss of his wife. But in the meantime, he's heading to his new assignment with a less than enthused Jake enjoying a nice fishing holo program before moving to his new home. Also, I'm glad to see fishing games make a comeback in the 24th century. Boy, talk about your fixer-upper. But first, some background. Deep Space Nine is a former Cardassian station orbiting the planet Bajor. For the past 60 years, the Cardassians occupied Bajor, imposing forced labor as well as committing atrocities against the Bajorans. Despite not being as technologically advanced as the Cardassians, the Bajorans ran a seemingly hopeless cause against them until they finally agreed to withdraw from Bajor and let the Bajorans rule themselves. The Bajorans took control of the orbiting station, now called DS9, and asked the Federation to help them run it and provide protection while they get back on their feet. However, just before they left, the Cardassians completely trashed the place. No defensive weapons, no beds, barely a replicator.
Not a single luxury.
Probably took all the copper wire out of the walls while they were at it.
I didn't steal that copper wire. I just thought they were throwing it out. Here, take it.
We're gonna have to rough it until we get things up and running, Jake, okay?
And joining this crew, making his probably already bad day even worse, is Starfleet's most badass engineer, Miles, the hero of Setlick 3 O'Brien from the Enterprise, having just been upgraded from recurring character to main cast.
I almost forgot. Captain Picard wants to see you as soon as possible.
Yeah, he can wait on his air-conditioned Enterprise. We got a crapped-up station here, muggings on the promenade, and ops is set to 89 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is it my imagination, or is it unusually warm?
And Sisko's in full dad mode right now. Who the hell turned on that thermostat? You think we're made of money here, Ducat? Heck, even the new first officer, Major Kira, is particularly ornery and having a bad hair day. Though truth be told, I've come to not hate this hair over the years.
Have you ever served with any Bajoran women?
No, why?
You can't just dump that much raw energy into a bridge terminal without
We're
blowing.
not going to get out of this by playing it safe.
I was just wondering, sir.
Well, Kira has a nasty habit of telling the truth and lets Sisko know she doesn't want the Federation here.
The Federation is only here to help.
Help us. Yes, I know. The Cardassians said the same thing 60 years ago.
Now, this lays a lot of groundwork for the Bajoran Federation conflict in early DS9, something that does lessen over time. After a 60-year occupation, the Bajorans aren't exactly keen on having the Federation help them out. There's a lot of mistrust of outsiders here, even of those who want to help. It's going to take some work for these two to really trust each other. Meanwhile, looking absolutely horrifying on a screen, Odo, the station's chief of security and shapeshifter, calls about a crime in progress and apprehends the perps. While a lot of DS9 has aged extremely well, the special effects for Odo's gelatinous state have not and still look pretty 90s. One of the perps is Nog, nephew of local bartender Quark, sans eye makeup, who Sisko strong arms into staying on the station in exchange for letting Nog out of jail.
We need a community leader, and it's going to be you, Quark.
Quark decides to stay and reopen his bar, which is pretty seedy early on. It evolves into more of a bar and grill as more families move to the station throughout the series, but right now, it's more like an old Western saloon.
Sir, the Enterprise hailed us again. Captain Picard is waiting to see you.
The sheer boldness! Look, Ben, Picard made you some tea, and it's getting cold! This is payback for Picard keeping the Shellyak waiting, isn't it?
Welcome to Bajor.
Now, I could go on about how literally everyone pronounces it Bajor, except for Picard who says Bajor, but this video is already long enough as it is. Now, since this is the first time Sisko's seen Picard after Wolf 359, albeit he was Locutus at the time, the meeting goes about as well as you'd expect.
I was on the Saratoga at Wolf 359.
This scene was a big reason why I had a hard time liking Sisko initially. In fact, I did a whole video on it. Because even though I understand why Sisko was acting this way, blaming Picard for his involvement in Jennifer's death, I still have problems with it because Picard was also a victim of the Borg when they forcibly assimilated him and used him against the Federation. In fact, Picard felt so guilty over not being strong enough to resist it that he also considered quitting Starfleet. These two actually have a lot in common, and I hate that Sisko's behaving this way towards Picard. And in fact, chances are that Trekkies watching this already saw Picard's massive guilt in the episode Family, and yeah, most of the audience is probably siding with Picard, and Sisko has a bit of an uphill battle to win the audience over. Also, he's being borderline rude to a superior officer. Is this acceptable? Anyone in the military watching this, please leave a comment. I'm curious if Sisko could have gotten away with this in real life.
In the meantime, I will do the job I've been ordered to do to the best of my ability, sir. Dismissed.
I like to think that Picard is still feeling residual guilt over his actions during Wolf 359, and that's the reason why he doesn't even bother calling Sisko out here. All that being said, Picard's not perfect in this scene either. Sisko pointed out that he survived Wolf 359, and instead of addressing it, Picard turns around and gets to business. Like, I get you're the stoic captain and all, Jean-Luc, but you're not gonna address that? It's kind of a big deal. Heck, it's such a big deal that it's been used against you before.
Have you completely recovered from your experience with the Borg?
Yes, I have completely recovered.
Heck, it's the whole reason Sisko's considering leaving Starfleet. He's a widower raising a kid by himself.
Unfortunately, as Starfleet officers, we do not always have the luxury to serve in an ideal environment.
Jeez, chill out, Jean-Luc! You're the reason he's raising a son alone! This is a big difference between Picard and Sisko, though. Picard put his career first in lieu of having a family. In fact, it's a theme that's brought up every so often.
Didn't you ever wish you had kids of your own?
Wishing for a thing does not make it so.
Meanwhile, Sisko managed to have a family while in Starfleet, but he's willing to put his son ahead of his career. It's a theme in Star Trek that Starfleet officers, especially captains, can't afford to have families. But here's Ben Sisko completely subverting that. You're getting a different kind of Starfleet officer in Sisko, in more ways than one.
I suppose Starfleet officers aren't used to getting their hands dirty.
Sisko is a much more hands-on kind of Starfleet officer. He's not just gonna send his officers to do literal dirty work, he's getting in on it too.
You know, at first, I didn't think I was going to like him.
Kira reveals how dire the situation on Bajor is. They're on the verge of civil war, and only Kaiopaka, their religious leader, can prevent it. So a quick trip to Bajor ensues for Ben to talk with Kaiopaka, and she squeezes his ear a little bit.
Kaiopaka, if we could discuss...
Breathe!
Don't worry, she's just feeling his paw. And then she activates the fake pond from Mist.
I cannot give you what you deny yourself.
According to Opaka, Sisko is destined to be the Emissary. Hey, episode title. What does that mean? Well, she doesn't really say. You'll have to keep watching the show to find out. And the whole reason for all the secrecy and hidden staircase? This thing.
What is it?
The tear of the prophet.
Literally never called that again. They're orbs after this point. Either way, whatever it is, it makes Sisko relive wearing a swimsuit, meeting Jennifer for the first time, and just being an overall goof.
Ow! You're supposed to say yes!
And then just when he meets the love of his life again, Ben is hit with a fresh dose of trauma as the orb experience ends.
I think I better clear my calendar for the next few weeks.
And after opening those fresh wounds, Opaka tells Ben to find the Celestial Temple because it's his destiny, and then gives him the orb to help him out. And again, she never really explains any of this. With the next scene being a quiet moment between father and son, this is a good opportunity to talk about the father-son relationship that is Ben and Jake Sisko. It's one of the best themes of the show, and it's one that Avery Brooks wanted to emphasize. While Trek is full of characters who had poor relationships with their fathers, Ben and Jake are an exception and share a close bond with each other throughout the show. Their scenes are so heartwarming together, and it's one of those things that humanizes both characters. Sisko isn't the stiff officer that a lot of Starfleet officers are. He's a father who jokes around with his kid.
Okay.
Heck, Jake is a regular kid, not some sort of super prodigy, and he has a father who loves him. Even though he gets into teenage hijinks throughout the show, Ben raised a good kid with good values. You get the sense that they're a real family, not a couple of actors who are told to act like they're related. Later on, and fresh off the shuttle, is new CMO, Dr. Julian Bashir, a young, eager doctor looking to become a hero and practice frontier medicine, only to get hit by a dose of reality by Kira.
Cardassians left behind a lot of injured people, Doctor. You can make yourself useful by bringing your Federation medicine to the natives.
And Science Officer Jadzia Dax, a Trill carrying a 300-year-old symbiont that was once in another Trill named Curzon, who was Sisko's mentor and friend who recently passed away. And she happens to carry his memories. Basically, Jadzia is a wise old man in the body of a 20-something woman.
It's good to see you too, old man.
And meanwhile, on the Enterprise, Miles says his final goodbyes before Picard sends him off to DS9, a passing of the torch in a way. And you can tell there's a fondness between them, and it's a really heartwarming moment.
You petty excuse for an officer?
And then strutting his way into Sisko's office is Gul Dukat. Yes, the former prefect of Bajor, last tenant of Sisko's office, and the man with enough arrogance and swagger to think he can steal the scene.
I miss this office.
I was not happy to leave it.
Drop by anytime you're feeling homesick.
Mark Alimo was really well cast in this role. The way he walks, the insinuations, his cocky attitude, the eyes. You need someone with just as big of a presence as Avery Brooks in order to be a worthy adversary. Also, Dukat seems to know almost everything Sisko's done on Bajor, which does confirm my earlier suspicions that he totally has the office bugged.
I'd be interested to know Gul Dukat has just arrived on the station.
What, is Sisko's office bugged or something? How does Dukat keep getting live updates over this custody hearing? Well, Dax just found out about a weird anomaly in the Denorius belt where the other orbs were found, and they should probably check it out. So Kira makes a distraction in Quarks to sneak Odo onto the Cardassian ship so he can download music with LimeWire on their computers.
Their computers are crashing.
And Sisko and Dax make it past them unnoticed. Also, Chief O'Brien straight up kicks a console to make it work. That's why he's the chief. Geordi, your move.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
This is one hell of a discovery. Not only is this the only stable wormhole in existence, in other words, it stays in one spot and hasn't collapsed in 10,000 years, but it plopped Sisko and Dax in the Gamma Quadrant, 70,000 light years away from home.
Bring us about, Lieutenant.
Oh, 7 years, Janeway! 7 years. But while the trip home is certainly a lot faster than Voyager's, it's not without its weirdness.
We've just landed.
On what?
Is there air? You don't know!
Sisko steps outside onto a desolate rock face during a violent storm. Dax, on the other hand, steps out and sees something completely different.
Do you see the storm?
It's as clear as a summer's day.
Now, I like the symbolism in this scene. The way Dax and Sisko perceive their surroundings in the wormhole is symbolic of their state in life. Sisko is deep in grief over the loss of his wife. He's angry at Picard, and he's considering leaving Starfleet. His internal turmoil is represented by the rock face with the storm going on. Dax, on the other hand, is content with life. A 300-year-old worm with 300 years worth of wisdom re-experiencing life as a young woman and knowing how to be at peace? Summer's Day. It's a shame this never comes up again, and even though the episode never explains it, it doesn't have to. It's showing without telling. Of course, an orb appears in front of them and sends Jadzia back to the station and engulfs Sisko in pure light with his life flashing before his eyes.
Welcome to the afterlife. You're dead.
Nope, it's first contact. Sisko just made contact with the entities in the wormhole who appear as people in his life. Now, a big part of DS9 is what exactly these entities are. The Federation calls them non-corporeal wormhole aliens, but to the Bajorans, they're their gods called the Prophets. The show largely keeps them shrouded in mystery, so you can draw your own conclusions, but for simplicity's sake, I'm calling them the Prophets. As a Starfleet officer, Sisko is treating this as a first contact situation, explaining that he's human and from Earth, and it'll take time to understand each other.
What is this time?
Oh, this isn't gonna be easy, is it?
This is no time to argue about time. We don't have the time.
Meanwhile, on the station,
what would it take to move this station to the mouth of the wormhole?
If Starfleet can't find us, they'll have to leave! Now, in reality, Kira wants Bajor to stake a claim at the wormhole, as well as organize a search party to find Sisko, and Odo insists on going.
I was found in the Denorius belt. I don't know where I came from.
We do get the start of Odo's search to find out who he is, which is a big part of his character arc throughout the show, but it's a pretty minor detail in this episode. Meanwhile,
The creature must be destroyed before it destroys us.
First contact's going well. The Prophets see Sisko as a threat to their existence just by being there. So, in an attempt to prove he's not their enemy, Sisko explains memories and even the concept of time to them. You really have to give Ben props for doing this first contact. Sure, we've seen Picard and Kirk make first contacts, and they're usually based in establishing common ground so everyone can relate to each other.
We have something very much like this on Malcor 3.
I think we shall find we have much in common.
Not only is this situation potentially hostile, but Ben doesn't even have the concept of time to relate to these entities. He really does have to reinvent the wheel here, and he's doing a pretty good job. And also in true Star Trek fashion, these segments with the Prophets delve into a lot of human themes that get overlooked. The nature of time, memories, and how both contribute to who we are as people. They're not action-packed scenes, but they really work your brain in a different way than you would usually get on TV. Meanwhile, Chief O'Brien put the station in a bubble to move it by the newly discovered wormhole.
Damn it, transfer the energy.
Unable to comply.
Also, Ducat's clearly headed for the wormhole, and again, how the hell does he know about this? Did anyone sweep Sisko's office for bugs?
Wormhole? What wormhole is that?
Meanwhile, since he brought up memories, yeah, Ben, you really left yourself open for the Prophets to start digging into your traumatic past. Hey, let me tell you about time. Okay, how about we talk about the time you lost your wife? The Prophets have no chill.
In a linear existence, we can't go back to the past to get something we left behind, so it's lost.
Upon reliving memories from happier times, Sisko explains that the day he and Jennifer decided to get married and start a family influenced every day that followed, and ultimately, that's the nature of linear existence. And then Sisko's dragged back to Wolf 359.
I don't want to be here.
Then why do you exist here?
And then Ducat proceeds to make things worse by going through the wormhole, which really freaks the Prophets out, and they collapse it. Nice going, Ducat! Yeah, apparently every time someone comes through the wormhole, the Prophet's existence gets disrupted because no one thinks about how their actions have consequences. But as Sisko explains, of course we accept the consequences of our actions. In fact, we use our past experiences to take consequences into account when making choices. In fact, that's how Jake got here! And then, Ben does something he's been dying to do the entire time. Bring baseball to the Prophets!
It's linear.
Sisko uses this, let's be honest, largely forgotten sport by the 24th century, to illustrate why linear beings value not knowing the future. Humans like anticipating what's going to happen and act accordingly. 100 different things can happen by hitting the ball with a bat, and the game is seeing how the consequences of those actions affect each other, and that's exciting. In fact, humans value the unknown so much that they explore the galaxy just to see what's out there and develop even more questions to learn from.
If all you say is true, why do you exist here?
Meanwhile,
we demand the unconditional surrender of this space station.
Things are pretty quiet on the station. The Cardassians aren't exactly thrilled that Gul Dukat disappeared, and they're not buying Kira's explanation that he went into a wormhole and it collapsed. Meanwhile,
what is the point of bringing me back again to this?
You bring us here.
You exist here.
Ben obviously doesn't want to be here, the most traumatic moment of his life. But it turns out it's not the Prophets bringing him back here. It's him.
We cannot give you what you deny yourself. Look for solutions from within.
Ben finally confronts Jennifer's death. He realizes that he never left the ship because ever since she died, he's been reliving her death, plunging further and further into grief to the point that it's affecting his present. Deeply grieving his wife for 3 years, holding on to anger towards Picard, and even leaving Starfleet. To put it simply, he's living in the past.
I see her like this. Every time I close my eyes.
And Avery Brooks is fantastic in this scene, pouring everything he's got into his performance as Sisko. This is a man deep in grief over losing his wife and being powerless to help her. He was even ready to die with her, but having survived Wolf 359, he never learned how to live without her. It's kind of a poetic irony. For all Sisko's talk about how prepared humans are to accept the consequences of their actions, he was completely unprepared to lose Jennifer. Even though he explained the nature of linear existence to the prophets, they pointed out the reality that it's a lot more complicated than he explained. Even though Sisko's bound by linear time, he chooses to live in the past at the time of Jennifer's death.
It is not linear.
No. It's not linear.
I really love this scene in the same way I love Picard's scene in Family, where he breaks down and finally admits what happened to him when he was assimilated by the Borg. They're both emotionally satisfying scenes from men who put up a strong front in front of their crew and even their families while dealing with emotional turmoil. It's a big reason why I'm disappointed that there weren't any more scenes between Picard and Sisko outside of this episode, because they really could have done some more healing together and we could have gotten some really profound scenes. Meanwhile,
What did I tell you, Jasad? There's your wormhole!
pulling Ducat's ship in tow, Sisko comes out of the wormhole, no worse for wear, and puts an end to the battle. Ben gives Jake a hug, and man, I love those two. It really warms my heart. Finally letting go of his grief over losing his wife and anger towards Picard, Sisko has one final meeting with our tea-guzzling captain.
Well, you've put Bajor on the map, Commander.
Now he pronounces it correctly. And after shaking hands and finally making peace, Picard bids Sisko good luck and departs the station. The episode ends with Quark trying to hit on Major Kira.
If you don't take that hand off my hip, you'll never be able to raise a glass with it again.
And that was Emissary, the start of DS9 and everything great about it. The station, the father-son relationship of Ben and Jake Sisko, the wormhole and those who inhabit it, and the deepening of the Bajorans, Cardassians, and even Ferengi. But most importantly, it's very much a Ben Sisko story, making him the larger-than-life badass he is, who's also a relatable human being struggling with loss and trying to be a good dad. And Avery Brooks nails it. And very little in Emissary is retconned, and a lot of what the episode defines ends up being important later on, making Emissary must-watch DS9. And it's a pretty great episode, one of the best in the series, and I would even argue it's the best Star Trek premiere episode. Sure, some minor things are never brought up again, and some characters still need to find their footing, like Dax. And I swear, if Kira's tough to like, don't worry, she gets better, and she's one of my top characters in the show. But Emissary is a wonderful episode on its own, about the struggles of dealing with grief and learning to forgive not just those who wronged you, but even yourself. So what did you think of Emissary? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it enough to get you into DS9, or did it take a few episodes for you to really appreciate it? How does it compare to the other Star Trek premiere episodes? And what are some of your favorite Sisko moments? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
We are explorers. We explore our lives, day by day,